I invited my entire family to a luxurious Christmas dinner. I wanted it to be a night we would all remember, a night filled with laughter and warmth. The reservation at Martinelli's cost more than I'd ever spent on a single meal. $800 for a table, but I didn't care. At 68, after losing my husband Henry 6 months before, I knew family was priceless. I wanted them close. As if family dinners were optional events you could just reschedule when they were convenient. 20 minutes after Jenna hung up, my son Lucas called. "Mom, listen," he said, his voice rushed. "I'm stuck at work." Elegant, full of families dressed up and celebrating together. The hostess gave me a look full of pity when I told her I'd be alone at a table set for 6. A family of 3 generations, laughing and sharing stories. A tall teenage boy burst through the door, cheeks red from the cold. His brown hair was a mess, his coat barely buttoned. "What are you talking about?" Adam looked around nervously, then gripped the envelope tighter. "They're all together, Grandma. They made me go with them to Romano's. Said it was a family meeting about your future." But when the lawyer started reading, "Months," Adam said. "Maybe longer, but there's more. There's something else in here they really don't want you to see."
He reached into the envelope and handed me a set of documents. It was a DNA test.
Grandpa had it done before he died. His hands were shaking as he put the envelope on the table. "Everything is yours, Grandma." But one thing was clear. The test was comparing Adam's DNA to our families. "I don't get it," I whispered. Adam leaned closer. "I'm not really your grandson, Grandma Elena. I'm not Mom's biological son. She adopted me when I was 2, but she never told you. She's been pretending for years, using me as a way to get money from you and Grandpa, acting like I was blood family. The house upstate, the savings, the investments, Grandpa left it all to you." My wine glass toppled, spilling red wine like blood across the white tablecloth. Everything I thought I knew about my family was crumbling right in front of me. But as I looked at Adam, the boy who ran through the streets to bring me the truth, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could still find something real in all this heartbreak. At Romano's, just 3 blocks from here. They planned this. My knees buckled and I sank into the chair. "Planned what, Adam?" He clenched his jaw in a way that reminded me painfully of Henry whenever he was angry. "Grandma Elena," he called out, and several people turned to stare. My grandson Adam was standing there with an envelope in his hand, his face trembling with emotion. With the grandmother at the heart of it all, cherished and included. The tears started then. I asked, completely confused, "Weren't you with your mom and the rest?" He was out of breath, like he'd run blocks to get here. In his hand was a thick, official-looking manila envelope. His eyes were glassy with tears. "I had to find you," he said, voice cracking. "I couldn't let them do this to you anymore." First I blinked them away, but soon I was dabbing at my cheeks with the linen napkin, unable to stop. I kept thinking, why wasn't I good enough to be loved the way she was? "They needed you gone tonight," he said, raising the envelope, "because of this." I stared at it, unable to move. "What is it?" "It's from Grandpa Henry's lawyer. It came to Mom's house today." His voice dropped, full of shame and fear. "I mean, I'm his wife, aren't I?" "Because," Adam said, "they've been telling everyone that Grandpa was leaving everything to them. Mom was going to remodel the upstate house. Uncle Lucas wanted to use the investments for his new business. Uncle Matt was already planning how to sell off some things for his debts." My mouth went dry. "It's his will, Grandma, and there's something else. Would you prefer a smaller table?" she asked. "No," I said, trying to sound strong. "Leave it just like it is. There's a deal falling apart, and I need to fix it. You know how it is?" I knew exactly how it was. Lucas's business had always come before me, for as long as I could remember. "What about Rachel and the twins?" I asked, thinking of his wife and my other 2 grandchildren. "They're actually with Jenna, helping with Megan. Just trying to keep the kids entertained." A cold weight settled in my chest. "So they're all together?" There was a pause. "Well, yeah, but just for a bit. Nothing planned or anything." "Right." I needed to feel like I still belonged to someone. "Tripla can't get here for hours. I'm really sorry. Maybe next year." "So sorry." The loneliness had been swallowing me ever since Henry passed, and this dinner felt like a tiny lifeline to hope. 3 children, 3 excuses, all within the same hour. It was almost impressive, the way they had coordinated it. But I'd already paid for the reservation, and sitting alone in my apartment was worse than sitting alone in public. So I went anyway. I filled the table with plates, trying to make it look less empty, even though every seat around me was painfully vacant. I tried to ignore the stares, the whispers of the servers who wondered what I'd done to deserve such a lonely Christmas. But on the day, they abandoned me and ate together somewhere else. I sat alone in that expensive restaurant, trying to hold back my tears. I wore the sapphire blue dress Henry always said made my eyes sparkle. Around my neck, I fastened the pearl necklace he'd given me for our 40th anniversary. My hands trembled a little as I did the clasp, and I tried to convince myself it was excitement. Deep down, though, it was fear. The fear that maybe none of this would matter, that maybe they would all find reasons not to come. Until my grandson walked in, handed me an envelope, and with that, everything I thought I knew about my family unraveled. When I opened the envelope and saw the key and DNA test inside, my entire world changed. I'm grateful to have you listening. Please stay with me until the end, and if you can, comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story can reach. For days, I had poured my heart into planning what I believed would be our first real Christmas dinner together in years. That morning, I took extra care with my appearance. The first call came just as I finished curling my hair. "Mom, I'm sorry," Jenna said. Her voice was sweet, just a bit too sweet. I could hear the fake concern behind every word. "Little Megan has a fever. And we can't risk getting everyone else sick. You understand, right?" Jenna had been using that tone for years, the one that sounds loving but always means she's too busy for me. Megan was my granddaughter, supposedly my pride and joy, though I hadn't seen her in months. "Of course, honey," I replied, forcing a gentle tone. "Is there anything I can do?" "No, Mom, we'll be fine. Maybe next time. Maybe next time." Finally, my youngest, Matthew, called. He had the most creative excuse of all. "Mom, my car died on the highway." I sat in my living room, fully dressed, staring at my phone. Martinelli's was even more beautiful than I'd imagined. I ordered a bottle of the Merlot Henry used to love, then appetizers I couldn't really afford. But the worst moment came when I glanced at the table next to mine. Suddenly, I heard footsteps running through the dining room. "Adam, what are you doing here?" "Do what, sweetheart?" The dinner wasn't the real plan. He sat beside me, in the seat meant for his mother. The restaurant faded into the background. "That's wonderful," I whispered, "but why would that upset everyone? How long have they known about the will?" My hands shook as I held the papers, trying to understand the medical jargon. The papers fluttered to the floor. Adam helped me to the restroom, his hand warm and steady under my trembling arm. I stared at myself in the mirror, water running cold over my fingers. The woman looking back at me seemed older than 68. My makeup was streaked with tears, the careful hairstyle drooping. For a long moment, I just watched myself trying to see the person Henry always saw. My eyes, though swollen, held something new. Not just pain, but a strange clarity, like a window thrown open after years of stale air. When I returned to the table, Adam was waiting. He was calm.
He said the will was clear updated only 6 months before Grandpa passed. Everything went to you, except one thing.
If something ever happened to you, it would all go straight to the grandchildren, skipping the kids entirely. As if measuring the people who called themselves his children. I'd thought it was the illness, but now I wondered if it was suspicion. He insisted I eat something, so I forced down a few bites of bread while he told me the rest of the story. Adam gave a sad, bitter laugh that sounded too old for someone his age. "For money, Grandma." "Always money. Mom figured out early that you and Grandpa couldn't say no to a sob story. She made one up and used me as proof. Just my expenses, school, activities, medical, probably over $200,000, but that doesn't count the other things." Adam hesitated, looking almost afraid to keep going. "The times Mom said you were having memory problems, that you needed help with your money. The loans Uncle Lucas needed for his business. Uncle Matt's gambling debts that always turned out to be emergencies." He'd always been protective, even if it sometimes felt overbearing. "Yeah," Adam said. "What happened after the lawyer finished reading?" I asked. They'd been plotting this for years, maybe decades. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Adam hailed a cab and we rode in silence. He clutched the envelope to his chest, almost like it was a shield. Every few blocks, he glanced at me with this worried expression, as if he feared I might blame him too. Mom started shouting that there had to be a mistake, that Grandpa must have been confused. He nodded, relief flooding his face. Mom will probably wonder where I am, he mumbled. I asked, setting a mug in front of him. About not being related to us? You two were the only adults who cared about me, not for what I could do for you. Adam, our love for you was never about blood. It never will be. Adam stared into the steam, his voice soft. Then Adam looked up, his voice low and urgent. There's something else I need to tell you about tonight. Something that happened after I left the lawyer's office. First, I went back to Mom's house to get my things. I thought maybe I could slip out without a scene, just disappear for a while. But they were already there, and they were planning something. I suspected for a long time, but I only found out for sure tonight. There were always clues, little things that never made sense. I always worried you'd stop caring if you knew. But I was just another mark in their game. They also talked about having you declared incompetent, Grandma. Uncle Lucas said your judgment was poor because you kept supporting me even after you learned the truth. They're going to try to get guardianship so they can control the inheritance. Let her wonder, I said. They want to make themselves look like heroes, saving you from me. I'd lost Henry, and now my children wanted to take my dignity and freedom too. But I wouldn't let them. Not now, not ever. Let them all wonder. I took the subway and ran 8 blocks, Grandma. Talking about how to challenge the will, not just about Grandpa's mental state, but about my right to any inheritance. They want to say I'm a fraudulent heir. For Henry, for Adam, and for myself. He looked so young in the lamplight, too young for all the secrets he carried. I couldn't let them hurt you anymore. You've been alone enough. Say I tricked you and Grandpa out of money. If they can prove fraud, they might be able to void the will. But there's more, I asked. Medical stuff. Explaining how he overheard conversations, snippets, no. I was in my room with the door open, but I heard enough. They're meeting with the lawyer tomorrow morning. Mom is already searching for doctors who say you re not fit to manage your own life. Uncle Matt is looking up guardianship laws. Uncle Lucas is dividing up my future as if I'm already gone. My own children, willing to destroy everything left of my life for money. Willing to destroy Adam too. About as long as he doesn't find out, or it's working better than we hoped. At first it just confused him. Later he realized the pattern. Every time I sent a check, every holiday gift, Mom would get this look of satisfaction like she'd won a prize. When I was 12 and needed surgery, the doctors asked about family history. Mom would freeze, then tell a different story every time. Sometimes she said my real parents died young. Other times she said I got my eyes from you. But none of it ever matched. Adam met my eyes, and for the first time I saw something new in his face. His love for art when none of us could draw a stick figure. It all made sense now. Strength. I thought about all the birthday hugs, the times I told him I loved him, the Christmas gifts, the questions about his grades. Even if we weren't related by blood, he was more of a real grandson to me than anyone else. Uncle Lucas was already calling his lawyer before we even left. Too busy fighting over money and making plans to contest the will. Mom started talking about hiring her own lawyer. Uncle Matt just kept saying, "This isn't fair," over and over. Grandma, Mom used to coach me on what to say when we visited you and Grandpa, how to act grateful, how to drop hints about what I needed. I thought that was just normal family stuff until tonight. Mom made up a whole story about adopting me from a distant cousin who died, but that was a lie. His eyes full of hope, I felt something bloom inside me. Maybe real family wasn't about DNA, maybe it was about who showed up when it mattered. But as I squeezed his hand, I knew tonight's revelations were only the beginning. If my children lied about Adam for 15 years, what else were they hiding? And what would they do next to get what they wanted? She found me through an informal adoption, no blood ties at all. It was to be opened only if someone tried to contest the will or questioned family ties. My heart started pounding again. The DNA test, Adam nodded. Grandpa had been worried. He'd heard people talking at family gatherings, making plans about money. He wanted to know exactly who his family was. Even after death, he was still shielding me from our own children. His voice steadier now, as if the act of telling the truth was lifting a huge weight from his shoulders. The endless requests for help with school clothes, sports, summer camps, even medical bills, the gratitude calls, the birthday cards. All the times I'd written checks, believing I was helping my grandson have the chances he deserved. "How much do you think they got from us over the years?" I asked quietly. The lawyer's office was nothing like he imagined. Henry and I bought it decades ago. The DNA test showed I'm not related to anyone there by blood. Not Mom, not the uncles. Not even you, Grandma. And there was a letter from a private investigator Grandpa hired. My whole body went cold, I asked. Adam took a drink of water, then continued. At first, everything seemed normal. The lawyer read off some small gifts to charity and personal items for the kids. Then he got to the important part, the house, the savings. Every last thing was left to you, Grandma. The room went silent. Mom's face went white. Uncle Lucas started yelling at the lawyer, saying Grandpa promised him things. Uncle Matt just sat there with his mouth open. We spent summers on its porch, sipping coffee while watching the lake shimmer. I remembered swimming with the kids when they were little, dreaming of growing old there with Henry. The idea of Jenna gutting it, turning it into something soulless, made me feel sick. Heavy mahogany desk, thick law books, a window that looked out on gray city streets. My children Jenna, Lucas, and Matthew were there. Jenna got the call 3 weeks ago, Adam said. She made a whole show of being sad about having to handle Grandpa's affairs, but underneath she was practically giddy. She kept talking about renovations for the upstate house, how it would look after she finally made it right, confident, smiling, like they already knew how the day would end. I poured another glass of wine, my hands more stable now than they'd been all evening. How long have they known about the will reading? I asked. That house. What happened at the lawyer's office? What did the lawyer say? That sounded just like Henry, but there was another envelope. The lawyer said Grandpa Henry left specific instructions. I remembered our last family dinners, how Henry had become so quiet, watchful. The lawyer opened the envelope in front of everyone. A private investigator? I sank back in my chair, my head spinning. Why would your mother lie about that? Everything started clicking into place. The investigator's report had numbers, Adam replied. What other things? Each confession was another weight on my chest. I looked at Adam, this boy who was not my grandson by blood, but who had risked everything to bring me the truth. They lost their minds. And you? They didn't even notice when I left, he said. So you came to find me? Looking across the table at Adam, his face flushed from running. We left the restaurant together and stepped into the icy night. The city lights blurred in my tears. You can stay the night, I said softly as we reached my building. We'll figure things out tomorrow. Inside my tiny apartment, I made tea while Adam sat at the kitchen table, finally letting his shoulders relax. How long have you known? Like what? I thought about all the times I'd noticed Adam's differences. The dark hair when the rest of us were fair. His height, he went on. She'd even make sure Adam called to thank me personally, coaching him on what to say. I thought I was being a good grandmother. My anger burned. That's despicable, I said, setting my cup down harder than I meant to. The worst part, Adam said quietly, was that I really loved spending time with you and Grandpa. That wasn't a lie. I reached over, squeezing his hand. His eyes filled with tears he'd been holding in all night. I hoped that was true, he whispered. We sat in silence, processing everything that had been revealed. What is it, Adam? I asked, bracing myself. I didn't come straight here. My stomach tightened. What kind of planning? They were on the phone with a lawyer Uncle Lucas knows. I stared at Adam, horrified. What does that mean? Adam's hands shook as he set down his cup. It means they want to make me the villain. He looked down, shame burning in his cheeks. I felt the walls closing in. Did they know you were listening? And what about you? I asked. What do they plan for you? Adam's smile was sad and tired. I become the problem, the thief who conned an old woman. Something inside me snapped. Adam, I said, my voice steadier than I'd felt all night. Would you help me fight back? His eyes widened in hope and determination. Yes, Grandma. It's time someone in this family stood up. I took a deep breath, ready at last to fight for what I had left. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind played through every conversation I'd ever had with my children. Every time I'd given them the benefit of the doubt. Every time I'd opened my wallet or my heart, thinking that maybe this time they'd see me as more than a source of help. I'd wake up sweating, remembering moments when I told myself I was imagining their indifference. Adam slept soundly on my couch under Henry's old quilt, looking more peaceful than I'd ever seen him. He was a gentle man, close to my age, with warm brown eyes and a patient way of speaking. Mrs. Carter, he said, using my married name, I'm so glad you called. I've been expecting you. Your husband left very clear instructions about what to do in case of a dispute. As the sun rose, I stood by the window and watched the city start its day. Inside were photos, bank statements, emails, even transcripts of phone conversations. Henry had hired a private investigator over a year before he died. My children's voices filled my ears. Mom seems more confused lately, Jenna said. Dad, we're worried about her living alone. She repeats herself a lot, Lucas chimed in, his tone smooth and calculated. This is the plan your husband made for your protection, he explained. If your children challenge the will or try to prove you incompetent, they forfeit any claim to your estate, and everything passes to you immediately. If they try to seize control, all assets are locked in a trust under a court-appointed manager until the dispute is settled. Henry thought of everything. Matthew's voice followed, suggesting maybe they should start managing my finances now, just to make things easier for me. And you finally see what I've seen for years. I'm so sorry, my love. Henry had always understood, even when I didn't want to see it. He wrote about the years I sacrificed for the kids. Adam watched me, tears glistening in his eyes. He really loved you, Grandma, he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The times I forgave them when they let me down, outside the air felt different, brighter somehow. Henry was gone, but he'd made sure I would never be alone, not truly. I had Adam, and I had the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe I had a fighting chance. The moments I made excuses for their bad behavior just to keep the family together. He told me that it was time to stop setting myself on fire to keep them warm. He urged me to stand up for myself, to remember that the strong, capable woman he married was still inside me. I wish I could protect you from this pain, but you must know everything I did was out of love. I know he's not our grandson by blood, but he's shown more loyalty and love to you than our own children ever have. If you choose to keep him in your life, you have my full support. I left funds for his education because he's earned it. What do we do now? He asked. Not because he's entitled to it by blood. Not with anger or cruelty, but with the truth, and with all the protection Henry put in place for us. And we start by visiting the house upstate. There's something Henry wanted us to find. I'm ready, Adam said. For the first time, he smiled, a real smile, full of hope and possibility. So you did not fail as a mother, Elena. They failed as children. You gave them everything and asked for nothing in return. The problem was never your love. The problem was that they took your kindness as weakness. They sounded so reasonable, so concerned. But I could hear the cold calculation underneath, the way they talked about me like I was already gone. He'd been suspicious about some of the requests for money, and the way our children talked about us behind our backs. My dearest Elena, it said, and just reading those words brought tears to my eyes. I closed my eyes and took a shaky breath. Your mother is perfectly capable of managing her own affairs, he said. Jenna pressed, insisting that I could make poor decisions. They circled back to Adam. He's not even really family, Jenna said. The money you spend on him could be used for Mom's care when she needs it, I asked. Mr. Phillips smiled gently. Just be prepared. I'll handle the legal response. Don't speak to your children alone. If they contact you, refer them to me. And there's one more thing. Henry left a letter for you to open after you saw all this. All these years, every time I thought I was helping, they were just feeding their own greed. Adam sat next to me, hands clenched in his lap. They never cared about you, Grandma, he said softly. Even now, he was still fighting for me, making sure I would not be left helpless and alone. They just wanted to get you out of the way. He wanted to know exactly what was happening. wondering how many other mothers woke up to discover they'd been nothing more than a stepping stone for their own family. Jenna at a luxury spa the week after she begged for help with Adam's school fees. "Nearly $1 million, Mrs. Carter," he said gently. "Money you and Henry gave them for supposed emergencies, medical bills, tuition, living expenses. But look here." He turned to page after page of deposits followed by transfers to high-end stores, travel agencies, car dealerships. "There's even evidence some of your money was pooled and invested without your knowledge into a failed business Lucas started 2 years ago. Lucas at an expensive restaurant, entertaining clients, champagne flowing on the same day he told me he needed $3,000 for a medical emergency. Matthew holding court at a poker table, his debts covered by another check from me, labeled urgent family crisis." I made coffee and tried to collect my thoughts. My mind kept circling back to Henry. Had he seen this coming all along? Had he known how little the kids respected what we built? What we'd sacrificed? He handed me a small digital recorder and a pair of earphones. Henry started recording family meetings with everyone's knowledge after he started losing trust. He told them it was because his hearing was failing, but really he wanted a record. For a long time, I blamed myself, thinking that maybe I'd loved them too much, forgiven too many things. As we sat in the back seat, Adam told me more about the plan he'd overheard the night before. They were desperate. The lawyer Uncle Lucas knew was already drafting documents to challenge the will. Jenna was on her phone trying to find a doctor who'd sign off on me being confused. Matthew was making lists of everything he thought he could sell, as if my life was just an estate sale waiting to happen. Let too many hurtful comments pass without consequences. But in the gray dawn, I realized none of it had been my fault. Kindness is not a weakness. Trust is not a sin. Adam woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. He wandered into the kitchen, hair sticking up in every direction, looking like the little boy I remembered from the photos Jenna used to send me years ago. "Good morning, Grandma," he said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I poured him a cup and slid a plate of toast across the table. "You still want to do this?" I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes met mine, and I saw in them the determination of someone twice his age. "I want to help you," he said. "They shouldn't get away with this." We dressed quickly and called for a cab. Mr. Phillips, Henry's lawyer, welcomed us into his office as soon as we arrived. He handed me another manila envelope, this one heavier than the last. I leafed through the photos, each one another dagger in my heart. Mr. Phillips flipped through the bank statements. My hands trembled as I set the papers down. "There's more," Mr. Phillips said. I pressed play. Henry's voice was quiet but firm. I took off the earphones, my face burning. Mr. Phillips pulled out one more document. A wave of relief swept through me, mixed with a bitterness I couldn't quite shake. Henry had always been my rock, my protector. Is there anything I need to do right now? He handed me an envelope with Henry's familiar handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means our children have shown you who they really are." I wiped my face with my hand, feeling every word in my soul. He ended the letter with a note about Adam. I clutched the letter to my chest. We left Mr. Phillips's office together, the letter in my purse, the documents in a folder clutched to my chest. Back in the cab, Adam squeezed my hand. "We fight back," I told him. The drive to the lake house was long and silent. Adam watched the city slide away through the window, his backpack in his lap, the envelope of legal papers clutched tightly to his side as if he expected someone to snatch it away at any moment. I drove in a daze, the roads familiar but heavy with memories. Every turn reminded me of a summer picnic, a birthday, a moment when the future seemed bright and uncomplicated. Henry's words were a balm and a sword. He reminded me that I was never the weak one. Inside were bank papers for the trust. Adam stood quietly in the doorway, not saying a word, letting me feel what I needed to feel. After a while, I beckoned him over and handed him the flash drive. The deed to the new lot, a flash drive of photos, and a final note with just 3 words, "You are enough." My only mistake was believing love could fix everything. "Do you think they'll really try to come after you? Try to take the house, or get control of your money? But your grandfather made sure they can't succeed, and I'm done letting them hurt me." He wrote that my loyalty was not a failure. I could picture Jenna's tears, Lucas's anger, Matthew's desperation. And for the first time in years, I felt protected. I dreamed of new beginnings, of walking by the lake, of building something beautiful on that empty lot, of finally living for myself. I saw the way they looked at me during our last family dinner calculating, impatient, already seeing me as an obstacle rather than a mother. He smelled like lemon dish soap and hope. In that moment, I knew for certain I would fight for this boy, and for the piece of peace Henry had given us. No one would take it away. What if there was more they were willing to risk, more cruelty, more betrayal to get what they wanted? I promised myself that no matter what came next, I would never go back to who I was before, never again. But that enabling my children's cruelty had only taught them to take more. The sky a wash of gold and lavender. For the first time in a long time, I felt the sharp ache of grief start to shift. There was room for something softer to grow. I sat in Henry's armchair and called Mr. Phillips to thank him. He reassured me that all the legal protections were solid. "They'll make threats," he said, "but you have every tool you need to defend yourself. Just remember you're not alone. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of forgiveness, not for my children, but for myself." He urged me to choose myself, to stop sacrificing my happiness for people who would never value it. As we passed the old church and crossed the bridge near the woods, but because Adam had shown more heart than any of our children, he'd bought the lot next door, hoping we'd build a guest cottage for future family visits. Now he wanted me to make it my own, a space to start over. The combination to the safe was my birthday, he added with a little joke about how I never forgot his birthday, so he hoped I wouldn't forget my own. I wondered how many times I had made this journey full of hope. Now, I was returning with a heart shattered by betrayal but held together by the scraps of courage Henry had left behind for me. When we reached the house, I hesitated before unlocking the door. We plugged it into Henry's old computer, and the screen filled with images from a life I feared I'd lost. Christmas mornings, family vacations, even a video of Adam and Henry building a birdhouse in the backyard. In every photo, Henry's eyes sparkled with love. In every frame, Adam's smile was real. The keys felt strange in my hand, like they belonged to a different life. Inside, the air was cool and full of lavender, surrounded by the things Henry and I had collected over 40 years. We laughed about the time Henry burned the Thanksgiving turkey and remembered how he used to sneak Adam extra ice cream when he thought I wasn't looking. After dinner, Adam washed the dishes and I poured 2 glasses of sparkling water. We clinked them together in a silent toast to survival. "Let's see what your grandfather left for us," I said softly, the scent still lingering from the sachets I'd tucked into the dresser drawers every spring. For a moment, I stood in the entryway and let myself remember the happy times. The sound of Henry's laughter echoing through the kitchen. Adam as a little boy racing up the stairs, Jenna and Lucas squabbling over board games on rainy afternoons. The ache of all that was lost pressed against my chest. "Grandma, are you all right?" Adam's voice broke my trance. He was watching me with gentle concern, reminding me again that blood wasn't the measure of family. 3 pages of Henry's handwriting, steady and familiar. "My dearest Elena," I began, "if you're reading this, our children have shown you who they truly are. I'm sorry, my love, that you had to see it this way, but you needed to know. Every document I signed, every letter I wrote, was done to protect you. Not out of anger at them, though I wish they'd been different. But because you deserve to be safe and respected for the rest of your life." I nodded. The house looked unchanged, but nothing felt the same. In Henry's study, his reading glasses still rested on a half-finished crossword, his pen marking a clue he'd never solve. But on the desk was a sealed envelope I hadn't seen before, my name written in his careful script. My hands shook as I sat in his chair and opened it. I wiped my eyes, fighting to stay strong. He explained that he'd set up an education fund for Adam, not because of DNA. I opened the safe, my hands trembling. I held that note to my chest for a long time. "Let's look at these together," I said. We sat side by side as the sun set over the lake. That night, Adam made pasta and we ate at the kitchen table. As we cleaned up, I caught Adam staring out the window at the moonlit yard, a worried crease on his forehead. "What is it?" I asked, drying my hands. He hesitated. I considered his question. "They'll try," I said. Adam came over and hugged me, holding on tight. Later that night, when the house was quiet and Adam had gone to bed, I fell asleep with Henry's letter on my nightstand. Adam safe in the guest room. But as the night deepened and the wind rattled the windows, a sliver of anxiety crept in. What if my children weren't done yet? Morning came quietly at the lake house. I woke to the sound of birdsong outside the window and the soft light of dawn spreading across the bedroom floor. For a moment, I let myself believe I was back in a simpler time, when Henry would bring me coffee in bed and our biggest worry was what to make for breakfast. I feel like, I don't know, like maybe things are going to be okay. They will be. We're safe here. Your grandfather made sure of that. But as I sat up and looked around, the truth of everything that had happened washed over me again. They're desperate, Grandma. But I'm done being the mother they can manipulate. I'll listen when I'm ready. Or maybe not at all. They're still trying to convince you they care, but it's all about the will. About the money. The paperwork was tucked in the safe along with blueprints and notes in Henry's handwriting. It felt good to be planning something for the future, something that no one could take from us. She froze, her mouth twisting into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I watched through the window as Jenna stepped out, dressed in her best coat, her hair perfectly styled. She walked up the porch steps like she still belonged here, as if the last few days hadn't changed everything between us. "You're not coming inside," I said. "Say what you need to say here." He dreamed of building a guest cottage, a place for family to gather. "Enough! I know everything, Jenna. I know about the adoption, the lies, the money, all of it. Family isn't just blood, Jenna. It's who shows up for you. Who tells you the truth, who loves you even when it's hard. Adam is my family now. You're my family now, and nothing they do can change that. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them." My phone buzzed and buzzed, but I let it ring. My children's voices faded into the background, replaced by the steady hum of hope and the quiet promise of a new beginning. "Adam has been more honest with me in one night than you have in your whole life." Then she turned and walked back to her car, her shoulders hunched, her dignity stripped away. He looked uncertain, as if he was afraid I might change my mind and send him away, too. "You've been misled," she said quickly. "Adam's not who you think he is. Thank you, Grandma." The sun dipped low over the lake as we stood together, two survivors who had lost so much but found each other in the wreckage. Their greed, their sense of entitlement, they'd come back, again and again, to try to reclaim what they believed was theirs. I was ready for them now. For the first time in my life, I was truly ready. For believing in me. For fighting for me. You can't trust him. He's been using you. Now the idea felt bittersweet, but also full of promise. Adam's face lit up as he pored over the sketches, imagining a space that could be his for college breaks, his home base in the world. I'm not alone. Not anymore. And I'm not vulnerable, not with all the protections your father put in place. If you try to contest the will, you lose everything. That's what you were really here for, wasn't it? My children had lied, stolen, and schemed behind my back. My world had been shattered, but in its place, something new was being built, one small piece at a time. I found Adam already awake in the kitchen, pouring cereal into a bowl and humming quietly to himself. He looked up, his eyes brighter than I'd seen them in weeks. "Did you sleep all right?" I asked. "Best sleep I've had in years," he said. I smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "Please, Mom, you're not thinking straight. You're alone. You're vulnerable." After breakfast, we spent the morning walking through the house, checking on everything that had once been just a dream: my garden, the reading nook, the porch swing Henry hung himself the summer after Adam was adopted. I felt the old ache, but also a new determination. This house was mine now, not because I'd won it, but because I'd earned it, because Henry had trusted me to protect it and myself. By midday, my phone started ringing. I knew who it would be before I even checked the screen. Jenna. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, Lucas called, then Matthew. I let those go too. It was as if they could sense that their grip on my life was slipping, and they were scrambling to grab hold again. Adam watched me in silence, anxiety flickering behind his calm face. Finally, I handed him my phone and said, "Play their messages if you want. but I don't need to hear them, not yet. He listened, shaking his head after each one. I know, I said. We decided to start on something Henry had mentioned in his letter exploring the deed to the lot next door. All afternoon, we measured the property, walked the borders, made lists of wildflowers we wanted to plant. The quiet was shattered when a car pulled into the driveway. I opened the door before she could knock. Mom, she said, her voice trembling, we need to talk. I stood tall, Henry's letter still in my pocket. Jenna's eyes darted past me, searching for Adam. I held up a hand, stopping her. She started to cry, the tears she'd always used to get her way. No, Jenna. She shook her head, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Mom, please, don't do this. We're family. I met her gaze without flinching. She stood there for a long moment, her breath steaming in the cold air. When I closed the door, Adam was waiting in the hallway. You're not going anywhere, I told him. Not unless you want to. Tears filled his eyes, but he smiled. I hugged him, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight begin to lift from my heart. That evening, I sat by the fire with Henry's letter in my lap and Adam reading beside me. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. They wouldn't let go so easily. The days that followed were a blur of legal calls, paperwork, and quiet determination. Adam and I settled into a new rhythm at the lake house. He worked on his sketches for art school in the mornings while I gardened or read Henry's old letters by the porch window. The house felt both emptier and more alive than ever, before a strange mix of grief and hope filling every corner. Mr. Phillips kept in touch daily, updating me on every move my children made. They're trying to contest the will, he explained during one morning call, but your husband's documentation is airtight. Other days, the exhaustion of years of disappointment caught up with me and I would sit quietly, tracing the lines of Henry's handwriting on his last letter, letting the tears fall freely. Adam noticed. Always. He would bring me tea or sit beside me and simply hold my hand, never asking me to explain, just being there. Sometimes I wondered how a boy who had been used by my family for so long could still be so gentle, so loyal. They have no legal ground, Elena. Adam came outside and stood behind me as two men in suits stepped from the vehicle and approached the porch. My children sent emails, letters, and even flowers, thinly veiled attempts at guilt and manipulation. We only want what's best for you, Mom, one letter said in Jenna's careful script. We're so worried about you living alone. All they can do is try to intimidate or guilt you, to testify that I was at risk of financial exploitation. The blatant desperation in their voices would have broken my heart a year ago. They don't get to decide who I am. Not anymore. Now it just made me tired. Some days I felt strong, even fierce. It's like they're in some kind of play, and you're the villain in their script. They have filed a petition for guardianship on the grounds of diminished capacity. The recordings, the documentation, and your medical records show you are perfectly capable. Your children are forbidden from contacting you about your finances again. The trust is in full effect. You're safe. We're here to serve you with the official documents. Adam cheered, spinning around the kitchen and nearly knocking over his art supplies. I laughed a real, surprised laugh that felt so strange and so good. You made it, Grandma. You fought for both of us. The pain of the past still there but no longer crushing me. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd truly saved myself. To my surprise, it was Rachel Lucas's wife, standing on the porch with the twins Charlie and Ava holding their hands. I still had to say goodbye to the hope that my children would change. I still had to decide what kind of future I wanted to build, and who I wanted to share it with. Rachel looked different than I remembered, worn down, but also apologetic. The twins ran straight to Adam, hugging him as if nothing had changed. Rachel sat on the edge of the sofa, twisting her wedding band nervously. One afternoon, as I watered the garden, a car I didn't recognize pulled up. My heart leapt into my throat. The hardest part was learning how to live for myself. Charlie and Ava came to sit on either side of me, chattering about school and their summer plans at the lake. Rachel's words sank in remorse, not manipulation. I knew about some of what Lucas and Jenna were doing, but I went along with it. I told myself I was just keeping the peace, but it was wrong. She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I can't take back the lies, but I want you to know, the twins and I, we love you. Not for your money, but because you've always been there for us. I'm not going to fight for anything in the will. I want us to stay family." I steadied myself, took the paperwork with a steady hand, and thanked the men. I waited until they drove off before looking at Adam. "Mrs. Carter?" One of them called. "Yes?" "We're here on behalf of Mr. Lucas Carter and Mrs. Jenna Hayes. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate your honesty. I want the twins to know they're always welcome here, no matter what their father does." Adam tensed beside me.
He reassured me this is exactly what Henry prepared for.
"We'll file our response immediately, and the court will see the truth. They're only making themselves look worse." "They're not giving up," he said quietly. "No, but neither am I." Inside, I called Mr. Phillips, my hands shaking slightly as I explained what had happened. For the next few weeks, life settled into a strange waiting game. Lucas sent me a recording of himself talking to a doctor he'd found. Someone willing Adam sat with me as we listened, shaking his head. I reached for his hand. One afternoon the doorbell rang. "Elena, may we come in?" I led them in, wary but open. "I know you don't owe me anything," she began, "but I wanted to tell you I'm sorry." She wiped her eyes, looking at me with raw honesty. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I reached over and hugged her. She cried quietly as Adam took the kids outside to play. I felt the smallest sliver of healing, knowing not everyone in my family was lost. The next day, Mr. Phillips called with news. The judge has dismissed the guardianship petition. Relief hit me so hard I almost dropped the phone. Later, as we sat on the porch watching the lake shimmer in the evening sun, I took Adam's hand and squeezed it. "We made it," I whispered. He grinned. I looked out over the water, but deep down, I knew the story wasn't over yet. The hardest part, I realized, wasn't fighting my family's betrayal. Summer settled gently over the lake house, wrapping everything in warm golden light and the sweet scent of wildflowers. The legal battles were over, at least for now. "My children's calls grew less frequent," she said, setting the basket on the steps. Then she sat beside me in the shade, brushing the dirt from her hands. Their emails lost their urgency, and after a few final angry messages from Lucas, even the threats faded into silence. The quiet was a strange relief. Sometimes, late at night, I'd still check my phone. For the first time in a long time, I feel safe. Henry's protections. Adam's support. I lingered on the steps, looking out at the sparkling lake and the lot next door, where wildflowers grew in a riot of color. Just a few friends, Rachel and the twins, Mrs. Matthews, and even Tom from the hardware store who brought a handmade mailbox with Adam's initials painted in bright blue. Thinking of all the times I'd tried to buy love from people who could never give it freely. "We built this together," I said. "You and me. And no one can take it away." It wasn't the crowded family party I once dreamed of, but it was more genuine, more loving than any holiday with my children had ever been. Or see Lucas's number flash on my phone, just the two of us dancing in the kitchen. I felt so proud, so grateful that I'd been given the chance to nurture this boy's future. Instead of pouring my love into a well that never filled, I never answered. I'd learned that some doors, once closed, should stay closed. I felt something deep and true in my chest, not the fragile hope I'd clung to after Henry died, but a steady flame fed by new beginnings. I took out Henry's last letter, tracing his words with my finger as I'd done so many nights before. "You are enough." I whispered the words out loud, letting them settle into my bones. I knew I was finally ready to choose myself. I don't think I ever let myself hope for peace before. I wondered if my children would ever truly let go, or if they were only waiting for a new opportunity to test my boundaries once again. The wounds of betrayal take a long time to heal, and sometimes loneliness still caught me off guard. But I had learned something priceless. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shares your heart, who chooses you, who stands by you when everyone else walks away. Half expecting to see another desperate attempt to claw back control. Adam sat beside me and leaned his head on my shoulder. Sometimes I miss the dream of who I thought they could be. I miss the idea that loving someone enough could make them love you back, but I don't miss the pain. She never asked about the money or the estate. Instead, she brought fresh bread and stories from town. and the children filled the rooms with laughter that had nothing to do with obligation or guilt. I don't miss being used. A home, a real family. Instead, I found only simple messages from Adam or Rachel and drawings from Charlie and Ava, pictures of the lake, the cottage, and all of us smiling together under the wide blue sky. Adam threw himself into designing the guest cottage. Adam and I worked with local builders, picking every detail together. I let myself splurge on things I'd always denied myself: bright curtains, hand-carved shelves, a reading nook by the window. We planted a small orchard behind the cottage and hung wind chimes on the porch. Each day, I felt a little more like the person Henry always believed I was: strong, creative, worthy of kindness. Do you ever miss them, Jenna, Lucas, Matthew? Filling notebook after notebook with plans and sketches. I watched him flourish, free of the pressure to play a part he never chose. We picked out paint samples and tile swatches, and every evening we sat on the porch, dreaming aloud about what the future could hold. For the first time in years, I found myself thinking not about what I'd lost, but about what I still had and what I could create. One afternoon, while I was weeding the garden, Mrs. Matthews, our closest neighbor, stopped by with a basket of tomatoes from her vines. She'd become a dear friend in these months, a widow herself, gentle and quick to laugh, always willing to lend an ear. I brought you a little something for your dinner. You seem lighter lately, Elena, she said, watching me closely. Like a weight has lifted. I nodded. Mrs. Matthews squeezed my hand. You deserve every bit of happiness you can find. Don't ever doubt that. Adam joined us, his face flushed from the sun. Mrs. Matthews, will you come see the sketches for the new cottage? I want your opinion on the color for the porch. She grinned and followed him inside. We had a small celebration for Adam's high school graduation on the porch a week later. That night, as the sky turned from gold to purple and laughter drifted over the water, I never thought I'd have this, he murmured. I brushed his hair back. He looked up at me, uncertainty flickering across his face. I sighed. Adam nodded, his eyes full of understanding. Me neither. In the months that followed, the house next door slowly took shape. Rachel and the twins visited often. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of Jenna's car parked at the edge of the property. On the first cool night of autumn, Adam brought home his acceptance letter to the art college. We celebrated with sparkling cider and a homemade cake. Before bed, I sat alone on the porch, the lake dark and still under the stars. I knew there would be hard days ahead. And as the wind rustled through the trees and the house next door stood waiting, half-built and full of promise, but even in this new peace, a small question lingered. The first frost of winter came early that year. I woke one morning to find the fields and the lake sparkling under a pale blue sky, every blade of grass edged in white. I'd lost so much: my illusions, my trust in my children, hanging his artwork on the walls and arranging his books on the shelves. He hugged me tightly before he settled in for his first night, and I felt a pang of both loss and pride. He was my family now, chosen and cherished, and the empty rooms inside the main house didn't feel so lonely anymore. The comfort of believing that love alone could heal every wound. But in their place, I was so angry about the will, about Adam, about everything. I let my jealousy and greed get in the way. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. Wrapped in a coat I'd given her years ago. I looked at her, feeling a wave of both sadness and relief. I can't fix what's broken in you. I'm not angry anymore, but I can't go back to how things were. I have to protect the peace I finally found. Maybe you felt alone at a table meant for six, or wondered if your love was enough. Let me tell you, it is. Reflecting the stars and the life I'd finally claimed as my own. For the first time in years, I was at peace. And I hope wherever you are, you find that peace too. You are enough. Has your family ever forced you to choose yourself for the first time? Share your story below, and if you've stayed with me to the end, thank you. You're part of my family now too. You deserve people who choose you, who see your worth, who build you up instead of breaking you down. Stay right here because this channel is for you. She asked, her breath clouding in the cold. I knew Henry would have been proud, not just of Adam but of me. Proud that I had finally found the strength to stand up for myself and to embrace a life built on real love, not guilt or fear. I knew she needed to feel the consequences of her actions, not be rescued from them. When she left, the house felt lighter, as if a shadow had finally lifted. Adam gave me a gift. He'd made himself a sketch of the lake house surrounded by wildflowers, the guest cottage glowing with light. He'd written one line at the bottom: "Love makes family, not blood." The old pain flickered between us, but I was stronger now. Jenna looked around, taking in the changes, the photographs of Adam's graduation. Rachel brought the twins, Mrs. Matthews baked her famous apple pie, and even Tom from the hardware store stopped by with a new ornament for the tree. We sang, we laughed, and for the first time in my life, I felt no need to prove anything to anyone. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer defined me. My life was my own, full of people who showed up because they wanted to, not because they had to. The love in that house was enough. Rachel's children's drawings on the fridge, the books I'd finally bought for myself. I gained something I never expected, a chance to know myself outside the roles others tried to force on me. The world looked washed clean, as if someone had pressed the reset button on my life. Adam was already in the kitchen, thick with promises of change and pleas for forgiveness. I listened to each one, my heart steady and clear. Sometimes I replied with a short message, kind, but firm. Other times I simply let their words drift into silence. Making coffee and talking quietly with Rachel on the phone, planning another weekend visit with the twins. The house was full of quiet movement, warmth, and promise, a home built not on obligation, but on real care. As I sat by the window, I thought about the year that had passed. That week, Adam moved into the nearly finished guest cottage. I helped him unpack his things. The calls from my children never really stopped. Some were angry, full of accusation and blame. Others were apologetic. One evening, just before Christmas, Jenna drove up to the lake house alone. She stood on the porch in the falling snow. "Mom, can we talk?" I nodded, letting her step inside. "I know I can't undo what I've done," she said quietly. "I know I hurt you." Her apology felt real, but I'd learned the difference between regret and true change. "I hope you find happiness, Jenna," I said gently. "But you need to do it for yourself." She started to cry, and for the first time I let her cry without reaching to comfort her. As the holidays came, Adam and I decorated the house together. On Christmas Eve, as the fire crackled and the snow fell softly outside, I hugged him, feeling every bit of pain and joy that had led me here. As the year ended, I stood on the porch under the stars, breathing in the cold, clean air. If you're listening to my story, maybe you've been where I was. The lake was perfectly still. Now I'm curious, what would you have done in my place? And if you want to hear more stories that will surprise you and maybe even help you find your own strength,